Hello then, welcome to another edition of the Citi Business Forum. My name is Michael Obudu. All through the month of June, we'll be bringing you the Citi Business Festival, and every week on Tuesday, we have a 2-hour conversation with various stakeholders on very interesting business topics that can help you with your business and help you better appreciate the business landscape in the country. Well, the show is interactive. You can send us your message via WhatsApp on 0550-585832, or you can tweet at us at CitiTVGH and at Citi97.3. And on all our social media platforms, you can tweet at us or reach out to us via the hashtag Citi Business Festival, or you can tweet at me at Michael Obudu. The show is sponsored by Absa Bank with support from MTN Momo, Gesal, IT Consortium, and GIPC. Well, if you have any messages, then send them through. We'll go for a quick break and come back and delve into the conversation for today.
Whoever you're doing it for, we'll help you get it done. Simply. That's Africanacity. That's Absa.
Creamy Plus is a fully skimmed evaporated milk. Creamy Plus is available in a shop near you.
This message has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Yeah, welcome back to the Citi Business Forum. My name is Michael Obudu. Please remember that this conversation is interactive. You can join in through our WhatsApp platform 0550-585832, and you can tweet at us at CitiTVGH and at Citi97FM on all our social media handles, or you can use the hashtag Citi Business Festival. Well, today we are discussing the surviving the uncertainties of consumer markets and increasing Ghana's trade competitiveness. And we have a solid panel in studio with us, and a couple of them will join us via Zoom to enrich the conversation. Right to my left is Robert Ahomka-Lindsay. He's a former Deputy Minister of Trade. Nice to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And we have Theresa Yamson, CEO of Phytorica Pharmaceuticals.
Pleasure to be here as well.
And Cynthia Bafor, the CEO of Syndex Garments Manufacturers, should join us via Zoom. Is she on? Okay, we'll put her up shortly on Zoom. And then Michael Kuto, the CEO of Confidence, will also join us. And right here in studio, we have Charles Addo, the head of retail at Absa Bank. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. So first off, I would like to find out from everybody, what's your take on the Ghana consumer market and how important is it? Ladies first, I guess.
Oh, wow. I think the Ghana consumer market is actually one that has, I would say, evolved over time. And when I say that, consumers have become clearly very conscious of what they buy. They're interested in the products. They're quite savvy. And it's something that is important for manufacturers to recognize because they're looking for quality. They want it at the right price. They also want perhaps to have a bit of convenience. So consumers are changing, and what they were perhaps even 10 years ago is not the same consumers that you're seeing today. And it's important sometimes to do what we call, and I know even in the banking sector they do it, but segmentation. So not all consumers are alike, okay? If I'm looking and targeting a specific consumer set, it helps in my business as I then develop and grow.
Interesting. Your turn.
Well, I think the first thing when I think of a consumer market in Ghana, there are three things that are top of my mind. First, and I'll make sure I get the right number, in 2020, household consumption was 69% of Ghana's GDP. 69% of Ghana's GDP was household consumption. The best performing was water in terms of, if you look at that. That's the second fact. The third area, which is actually a bit sad, and I think this I got from The Confident, is 74% of all the fast-moving consumer goods were imported. So 69%, vast majority of our GDP is consumer consumption. The largest is water, 74% is imported, which leads me to say that this is a huge opportunity for Ghanaian businesses as we look forward.
I'm sure we'll be very interested to know all the details that you have. You seem like you wanted to make a point?
Yes, I think and the Confidence study was an excellent one,
Okay.
No doubt about it. But I think when we're looking at it, one of the things I realized was obviously the focus was on what we call modern trade.
Okay.
So it's in the retail channels or the supermarkets that they're focusing on. There's the whole element, and a lot of our consumers, there are majority of Ghanaians who may not even enter the modern socio-economic factors might mean that someone in a lower class may then be in what we call an open market channel. So how and what might be happening in there, I thought would also be, in addition to this, a great way then to monitor. And I think we were even talking about it in terms of what might be happening in the open market. Might be quite radically different when you look at it. And it's not to say that there won't be maybe the same products, but perhaps the percentages.
So just to augment your point, less than 20% goes through the formal retail. 80%
Correct. Goes
of
through the
everything that
informal.
happens goes through our mom and pop shops
Thank
and our
you.
markets. So
Yes.
just to,
Exactly.
but it's a valid point.
Well, it's good you both referenced the Confidence report. Mike Kokoto is on Zoom. We should have him on to answer questions that you may have on his report.
Okay.
Mr. Koto, you're welcome. Can we have him on screen? And then tell us also what you make of the consumer market in Ghana and what does it mean for us as a country?
Thank you. And it's a pleasure to join the Citi Business Festival. I didn't grasp more.
Okay, I'm sure we'll have him back in soon to continue with his point. But so what about you, sir? You are the finance guys. Tell us.
So obviously, at 69% of GDP, is a very important sector to the banking industry. This is the area that creates jobs, consumption, economic activity. So it has a very big impact for us as banks. And you'll see that a big part of our balance sheets, both lending and deposits, goes to this sector as well. So extremely important to us.
How much of a big deal is it for business for you as banks?
Extremely big business. And like I said, a big part of our balance sheet, you see we lend into these areas, both to the manufacturers, the SMEs, and also to the individuals as well. And it's a very big chunk of our financials. It's a big focus for us, and it has a big economic impact, creates jobs, and we lend to all these salaried workers. So it's helping us across board everywhere.
Interesting. We have Madame Theresa Yamsing, the CEO of Phytorica. Sorry, I missed that. Cynthia Bafo, the CEO of Syndex Garment. She would tell us if she agrees with you entirely, if really the banks are out there really putting money in there. Okay, Madame, you're welcome to the forum. Just to pick your thoughts, first of all, what do you make of the consumer market in Ghana and how important is it to the economy?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing me up on the program.
You're welcome.
I should say that I didn't get much of the earlier discussions. So whatever that I am going to say is a general perception of the question that you are asking me. I think that the consumer out there is very important, especially for us, the manufacturers, because whatever that we are manufacturing will be for the direct consumption of the consumer. And so we cherish them, and we should always tailor our goods to their interest, to what they want, to their district. I also would want to say that we'll have to identify who our consumers are, because one thing we'll have to always keep in mind is consumer dictates, consumer, whatever they need keeps changing. It is not going to be the same. What the consumer would need today or what the consumer needed 10 years ago definitely is different from what the consumer would need today. And so the consumer out there is very important in our business.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. Mr. Koto, your report has already come up here about some of the findings you have been doing about the consumer market. So you're welcome to the show. We lost you earlier, but then tell us, how important would you say the consumer market is to Ghana and the economy?
Thank you. I was talking earlier, but I don't know if you heard anything at all. But the consumer markets are important. I was saying that consumer spending constitutes the largest share of our GDP if you compute our GDP on expenditure basis. So that alone tells you that it's extremely important, and we should pay a lot of attention to it. The other point, of course, is that consumer markets directly impact household welfare. So it's not just a market from a point of view, from perspective of markets. Consumer markets are also a sort of filter for understanding the quality of consumer welfare, the quality of household welfare in any economy. So we need to look at consumer markets from both perspectives, and how consumers fare in those markets tell you a lot about the quality of life and welfare of households in any economy. So those would be my initial comments on the importance of consumer markets.
All right, thank you, Mr. Koto. Now, let's look at how key the macroeconomic challenges are affecting consumer markets. You know, inflation is quite on the high side. Lending rate is going up a bit. Fuel prices are high. You are a player in the industry. How are you faring?
I think, as you rightly said, the macroeconomic challenges are a real challenge. It is making industry and especially manufacturers jittery. It is making the cost of doing business go up tremendously. And when I say that, it is, as you're saying, we buy fuel like anybody. I have boilers that need to be fired. So if I have to buy fuel at the same retail price that everybody is before I can produce my goods, you can imagine what that does. We are also you're talking inflation, there's also the depreciation of the city. Yeah. With the depreciation of the city, majority of the raw materials we use, unfortunately, are not local. So then we are buying raw materials from Asia, from Europe, to produce the goods here in Ghana, which means we're taking Ghana cedis, changing it, and then sending it out. With some of the supply chain challenges that we faced, freight has doubled in certain instances. Then you bring the goods in, and at what price can you sell it? Because that consumer that you're talking is also feeling the pinch. you cannot always pass on all the rising or the costs that you are bearing, which then means that your margins are squeezed to the very minimum. So if I were to be honest, I think manufacturing is suffering just like everyone else at the moment.
Interesting. Now, to you, the finance guys, what do you also make of this, the current macroeconomic situation in the country, how it's impacting the consumer industry?
Once the consumer is impacted, it affects us as well. So inflation is reducing the disposable income of the customer. Interest rates are extremely high. And to that point, at times you don't pass on all the cost of funds implications to the customer, but it's extremely high, which makes it difficult to lend. And also it can lead to impairments when people cannot pay their loans as well. And then on the interest rate side, with the rates going up, cost of funds high, customers are actually interested in fixing their deposits rather than leaving for us to do business with as well. So it's actually impacting us as well.
Okay, let me talk to you, Mr. Kalinsi.
Yeah.
But you also come from a policy perspective also. Well, so how are we faring and what is happening?
So let me give you a couple of numbers because that brings in. My investigation says that at least about 50% of all our fast-moving consumer goods are imported.
Okay.
So that means from day one, and I'm going to give you some numbers that may surprise you. Okay. One of the ones I mentioned earlier, the ladies will forgive me, but we import over $200 million of artificial hair every year into Ghana.
Wow.
Now, that means that when the exchange rate moves, bang. Even without anybody doing anything else, cost of imported hair goes up. But I'm going to give you a couple other numbers that you may be surprised at. So, for instance, we import from Mauritania. We did this in 2021, 45 million cedis of fish, frozen.
Wow.
We import from China tomato paste concentrate, 30 million Ghana cedis. I'm just going to give you some, just to give you an idea. We import from South Africa fresh apples, 18 million Ghana cedis. I just want to, juices from Spain, 15 million. Other non-alcoholic beverages from Thailand, 19 million. Give you another example of grape juice. People were talking about grape juice recently going up. From South Africa, we import the majority of that. So, and our biggest fast-moving consumer good import, both our value, is rice, close to $1 billion. So, when we talk about the impact of the macroeconomic, it directly impacts the consumer's welfare, I believe, as being mentioned earlier, because without you doing anything about it, the cost has gone up. It's also linked to shipping and everything else. But day one, if over half of what we do, what we consume, and the nature of fast-moving consumer goods is as it described. It's fast-moving. It's great business. Everybody, you have to drink every day. You have to eat every day. You have to wash every day. We import most of our oil palm to make soap and so forth. Even Ideal milk that I saw, and I believe there is another one that I saw, creamy something that comes in. You won't believe that oil palm goes into that, in part of that. So from day one, the impact of the macroeconomic environment has hit us very hard. But, there's a big but, this is not new. This is not new. For as long as, let's even limit it to the current constitution since 1992, this has been a factor of life in Ghana. And therein lies some of our challenges that we need to start to address. So the macroeconomic impact directly affects that. From the other 50% is also impacted, as was said, because even in making some of the other fast-moving consumer goods. So let's pick the biggest category, water. The plastic is important. The caps, even if you may be molding it here in Ghana, the base material is important. Even the items you put on top, you know, I was in the beverage industry once upon a time, is also important as a big film. The packaging, often the base roll is a big roll of I forget what it, basically wood, processed wood, which is then brought and repackaged different sizes. So indirectly that also affects it. And all that means is that if the fast-moving consumer goods are having a tough time, it will definitely reflect in the overall performance of the economy, because 69% of household consumption makes our GDP. So if that is suffering, you should not be surprised you're going to have a problem.
Interesting one there. I'm sure by the end of today we'll come to a conclusion or some solutions that can help address the challenge. But let me come to Madam Cynthia Bafo. How are you as producers also faring with the whole issue of the macroeconomics in the country currently?
Thank you. We are suffering, if I should say that. It is not easy at all. I said earlier, where most of the materials we use in producing are not locally made, where we have to import. Important means changing Ghanaian cedi into the dollar or into whichever currency that will be useful for the importation to import. It is also not easy, especially working in a situation where factors are not stable. We are talking of fuel, which is rising, the cost of fuel rising. We are talking of electricity, which powers our machinery, rising. You are talking of labor. You know, we are not the only people suffering. Those working for us and with us are also having effects of the macroeconomic instability. So they're also demanding monies. And when all this come to play on the manufacturer, it makes it so difficult to keep up the pace in manufacturing now. We are also suffering with macroeconomics. Whatever that we do, like I said, because we are importing, because we have very little of the materials we are using made locally. For example, you come to me, basic thing like I have to make a kaba for you. The main fabric is made in Ghana. There is another material I would use to line the dress for you that is imported. Its availability is important. You might not even get it. If you get it, the quality that you are getting, all this increases our prices. And when we put them together, it makes things difficult. Sometimes we are not even very competitive when we put these things together to work with.
Interesting. We'll come back to you shortly so you help us understand. You've mentioned quite a number of the challenges you're having, but would want to understand which of them really are key and you think should be addressed ASAP to help your industry thrive. But then we'll come to Mr. Kuto. You have been busy with a lot of research in the consumer market. So tell us give us your take on the macroeconomic challenges affecting the consumer market.
I agree with all the comments that have been made already. I just quickly want to say that it's a very unfortunate situation. We just come out of COVID, which severely impacted businesses and households alike. And just when we thought that we were getting out of the COVID disruption, we're hit with this situation. The worry that I have is that a lot of this inflation is really supply side driven inflation. And if you look at the measures that are being rolled out by government to try to address the situation, so you've seen the Bank of Ghana has been increasing the policy rate to try to tame inflation, which is standard, monetary measures to deal with inflation. However, a lot of inflation we're seeing is really, supply driven. And, there's no assurance that the Bank of Ghana interventions will substantially deal, with the situation. It's a very challenging sort of situation. Interest rates are going up, and that's severely impacting businesses. It's going to impact employment. So we need a more comprehensive approach to deal with this. Otherwise, the long-term impact of this, is going to be, that for the longest time, bringing down interest rates has been the one thing that businesses in Ghana have been crying over. And just when policy rates were, getting closer to 10%, and we're hoping that it was going to drop below 10%. We've been struck with inflation, and the Bank of Ghana has to increase the policy rate again. And now, if if we get into a runaway inflation situation, interest rates are probably going to go back. The policy rate is going to probably hit 30% in order to deal with inflation. And it's going to take us forever to bring interest rates all the way down again. It's a very, very disturbing situation. And I really hope that, government is able to find, a more comprehensive approach to deal with this. It's a really disturbing situation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Koto. Robert, I may have to throw this question back at you. You've heard him talk about the constant use of the increasing of the monetary policy rates to address the whole inflation concern, but then it is indeed from a supply side. Don't you think it's time we review how we tackle this issue?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the challenge we've had that this is not new. Since, frankly, probably since the 1970s, the situation has been this way. And so I try not to use economic jargon, even though I'm an economist. So let me move the supply side to say that the challenge is that the things we are importing, the price of what we are importing to sell to people, we're not controlling it and cannot control it. With all due respect to the size of the Ghanaian market, we're not in a position to control the price of rice from Thailand or telephones from mobile phones from, you name it, South Korea. So it means that what we've been continually doing is attacking the problem on, let's say, the 30 or 40% that is manufactured truly in terms of, if you look at the value chain, maybe 60, 70% of, let me use this example, 60 or 70% of this is manufactured in Ghana. You can start doing things to affect it. But if the majority of what you engage in is outside, you are basically playing a losing battle. And I think this has been the lesson from an economic perspective since 1992, is that every time there is a bump in the world, we suffer. When there isn't a bump in the world, we are able to do things and manage our process. So the only way to address it, he was saying more comprehensive, I actually think is not as difficult as it sounds. It is actually very simple. We have to simply manufacture more in Ghana and source more of our raw materials from Ghana. It is actually that simple. It is not, this is not rocket science. You don't need to have to be an economist to realize that if I'm importing 50 or 60% of everything that I consume, and 69% of household consumption is my GDP, and I can't control that, or I can't, let me use another word, influence that, then I'm in trouble. So the most simple product, or the most simple policy intervention, which, and I don't want to bring policy into it, but it has to, which is the government policy being done now to industrialization, is we have to encourage manufacturers like Leifito Reka and the garments and textile industry to not only manufacture more, backward integrate, and have specific policy interventions. I refer to them as push and pull intervention, and we can go into them a little later. But specific policies that ensures that the next cycle, because there will be a next cycle, when that comes, that 50 or 60% we're importing is now dropped to, let's say, 20, 30%, so that the intervention, both fiscal and monetary, that we do locally has an impact on the behavior of our markets. If we are having policies that don't have an impact, it's impotence. You're not going anywhere. You are just basically playing a game that you are never going to win. In fact, you are throwing good money after bad, because we're not in a situation of controlling the US dollar. We can't control, because the reality is too much of our economy is not in the hands of Ghana. So we have to change that process, and that is why I know people laugh sometimes, the likes of one district, one factory, and the rest. But let me tell you, if we don't address those things, we are always going to have the problem. If we're having a debate about whether or not we should bring in benchmark to support local industry, then we have a challenge. There shouldn't be no debate. The debate should be zero. It should be, we must bring this in to support local industry. Otherwise, we're going to keep having high interest rates. Inflation is going to go up and down. If you want to do an analysis, match, and the confident people is here, match our inflation rate and economic performance to the performance of various economies outside Ghana. And you will find when they are doing well, we're doing well. When they go badly, we tank, because we are so interlinked. But our city, our modes of income it's cedi, not dollars. So you are basically, it's a mismatch. It's a huge mismatch. So from an economic perspective, that is what we need to start doing, having some policy. And by the way, those policies is not a 2-year policy or 3-year policy.
Okay.
This is the next 2 or 3 decades where we make a decision as Ghanaians that in 3 years, 4 years time, we're going to import 0 rice. In 5 years time, we're going to plant 1 million hectares of oil palm. Remember, I haven't mentioned cocoa.
Okay.
Not because I don't think cocoa is important, but we have to address some. If you understand what goes into oil palm, where we have to say our sugar industry must be prolific in northern Ghana. We must introduce more commercial farmers. I'm being very specific in my intervention here because these are, and we must find a way of positively having policy interventions that is for industry. So for example, we cannot continue where domestic consumption of energy, electricity, is higher than what industry pays. That does not make any economic sense. Just doesn't work. If we do that, we shouldn't be surprised when inflation is going up or industry doesn't do well. They say there's no such thing as a free lunch. Sooner or later, we have to pay for it. So it's better we deal with it now. So let me stop there.
Interestingly, electricity rates for consumers in Ghana is actually one of the lowest in the sub-region.
Yeah. So there's a flip side. So where you have a situation where domestic consumption prices are lower, than industry. I think I got but the sentiment was clear what I was trying to get at. Because it's critical. You have to, that's what I'm talking about, positive intervention. The other one is the benchmark. Look, if COVID has taught us anything at all, is that when countries hit the wall, they take care of themselves.
Very true. Very true.
And so we should make no apology to anybody. If we realize that, you know something, we will not take this anymore.
All right. We do have to go for a quick commercial break, but in summary, what you are saying is that we have to look inwards and we need policies to drive that in order to stabilize the macroeconomic fundamentals. Thank you so much. You are still listening to the Citi Business Forum. We'll go for a quick break, but if you have any messages, please tweet at us at Citi FM 97.3 or at Citi TVGH. We'll go for a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Please stay.
Araba, there are some people at the door. Go and tell them I have traveled to Russia.
Yes, Daddy.
Where's your father?
My father said I should tell you he has traveled to Russia.
Your father has killed me. I sent him money from America to complete my house for me.
Are all student association contributions?
Even the money from the fundraiser for Kweku's surgery.
Oh! He too? Don't be a victim. If you're contributing to a project, alumni dues, or any public campaign, Chango is your best choice. Chango keeps track of all donations and gives you the power to know exactly where the money goes. Chango is approved by Bank of Ghana. Call 0270-066-614 or visit changoapp.com for more information.
Uncle, my father is hiding under the bed.
Oh, Araba.
Chango for your groupings and crowdfunding.
Whoever you're doing it for, we'll help you get it done. Simply. That's Africanacity. That's APSA.
Yeah, welcome back to the Citi Business Forum, where we are discussing surviving the uncertainties of the consumer market and increasing Ghana's trade competitiveness. And our guests have been sharing some very insightful conversations with us here, points here with us, and we'll come straight to you, Madam. Help us understand, what are the key constraints for you as manufacturers?
Well, I think we've mentioned some of them. If we're looking at the key constraints, access to readily available and I would say consistent supply of materials. In our industry, as I said, we're looking at what we call active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. We're importing some of these. If we are bringing even, or someone is perhaps able to either produce some of that locally, or what you would call excipients. He mentioned one, sugar. Even if I need sugar, I need to have it at a pharmaceutical grade. So the quality also of the materials that we use is of high importance in manufacturing. You cannot have inconsistent quality, so I cannot buy maybe even starch at a % moisture that is different today than tomorrow. It's going to affect the entire value chain. I'm sure similarly for the garment industry, it's the same. So our materials, it's a constraint. Access to capital is also a constraint, because if I'm borrowing and I'm borrowing at too high a rate, the likelihood that I'm having to then even charge exorbitant prices in order then to pay back the banks becomes an issue. You then find that in a sense as well, simple things as we've spoken about, just having constant utilities that will be at the right price to make sure that your manufacturing costs do not rise, so that then if costs don't go up in everything, I can also begin to actually perhaps price at a rate that would help the end consumer. But if today lights are off, I'm going to have to find an alternative energy source in order to keep manufacturing, because I have labor present. They can't go home, I'm paying them. So all of this adds and makes business quite difficult in a way that may or may not make it as we say, least cost as it should be. In addition, I think if we look at perhaps productivity in Ghana, and it's maybe a subject that we also need to delve into a lot. It's very hard sometimes to keep and ensure that people are productive so that the output is where you need to be. And if I do not run, because I have high fixed costs, if I do not run that factory in a way that then helps to optimize the overall production, I'm not going to end up making money at the end of the day.
From what you've said, and it means clearly that this whole conversation about likely increments in tariff is going to further worsen things for you.
But of course.
But I sorry about that. I also want to find out, you mentioned that you have to source externally some things like sugar and the likes. What is the challenge with getting these things locally at the standards that you want?
So right now, well, sugar is not available. So if I wanted it, it's not there.
Access is even not there, talk less of quality.
Talk less of quality. So if we come to quality, we've, for example, had discussions already with a local pharmaceutical, a local supplier of starch. And in this sense, for example, most of us import cornstarch. But here we're in Ghana, we have cassava. We can make cassava starch, okay? So we've had discussions saying, can I replace my cornstarch with the cassava starch? I can't do that immediately, because obviously when they bring in their material, I need to test it first. So there's also the issue of, I need to make sure that whatever material I'm buying from Mr. A or Mr. B can run successfully, and in terms of stability, will produce the same end product. Then I have to make sure that even if I've made that change, for example, that change for us, we have to abide by a lot of WHO GMP standards. Pharmaceutical industry is highly, I would say, strict, very, very strict in terms of the standards that we must. So FDA needs to approve all these changes. So even when you want to make a change, it's not immediate. You do have to plan it, but it is possible. So as he was speaking about in terms of packaging material, there are some of the things that we are looking into. Can I source local packaging? But I may be sourcing local packaging, which might be, say, what we call our cartons. But I use, if you buy, a lot of, say, tablets, you find they come with a PVC film and then they have a foil on it. Majority of that is being imported. We've found local suppliers now for, say, in Ghana, who are able to print. But like we were speaking about earlier, they may bring in the large roll before they do the printing. So again, they are actually part of the value chain. They are not actually making the foil locally. They are within the value chain. And so one of the questions I was asking when we had some of the meetings with the technical committee is, if I can, for example, get VAT exemption, and it comes back to how we look at some of our tariffs. If I can get VAT exemption when I bring in some of my raw materials, and some, if it's pharmaceutical grade packaging, why is it that we cannot extend that same courtesy to that middleman who is now making the packaging? So that if he is bringing it in on my behalf to print, at least if we look at it from that angle, there's an economic benefit, because he would also be actually employing more workers to work in his factory to produce the finished product. I will then not even have to maybe import, and my working capital may actually be improved, because I may not then have to import large quantities at a go from an external supplier, because I can do a bit of just in time. He's around the corner, maybe he's in Tema, so I know I can then make changes with him and then get the supply that I need from him. So the constraints are there. Working through them is obviously things that we can do. We know some of them, but not all that can be fixed immediately.
Interesting. Now, Madam Bafo, your take on this. For you in the garment industry, what would you say are your key constraints? Please unmute your microphone, Madam Bafo. We can't hear you. Could you please unmute your microphone? Also, if you're still tuned in, this is the Citi Business Forum here on Citi TV, where we are discussing surviving the uncertainties of consumer markets, increasing Ghana's trade competitiveness. You can send in your messages via WhatsApp line, and you can send us messages via Twitter at Citi TVGH. Madam, if you can hear me, please tell us, what are your constraints for you as players in the garment industry?
Yes, thank you. I was saying that we have a host of them. So I would attempt to speak about a few of them. And this, I will start with accessibility of our raw materials. In the garment industry, a host of the materials that we use in production are imported. A host of them. We are moving from the fabric itself to the accessories that are used, and a host of them would have to be imported. And so I would not even have to talk about the foreign exchange, which I've already spoken about already. It is expensive changing the Ghana cedi into that currency to go and buy. And when you bring in these things, you'll have to talk of the duty, the rate, which eventually make the things get to you at rates that makes you almost not competitive. And so it's the accessibility of our materials. We are talking of even the local materials that you have to get are expensive, because mind you, the manufacturer is not the only person who is feeling the economic situation now. So the person who's also producing for you to get to use to produce your garment, the price at which he will give to you is equally expensive. We have a situation where you don't have constant power supply. For example, if I have the order to produce, and in the midst of it, power is off, and power can stay off for as long as 24 hours. Sometimes you may have to follow it up. What it means is that production comes to a standstill. You are compelled to fall on other sources of power, that is generator. We are using fuel to power the generator. It makes production expensive. And mind you, we are lucky to use electricity 24 hours for as long as we want to use it. We cannot use any gen sets, any power set continuously for 24 hours or more. So what it means is that you use it for a period, you halt. This affects productivity. Again, we are talking of even the labor that we use. I am into garment industry, and so I'll talk of the machinist I am using. Ordinarily, anybody who can handle the sewing machine sees himself or herself as a skilled person. But when you bring such people into a factory to work, you realize that they are not skilled because we are not trained to work in the factories. We are trained to work on domestic level. And so these invariably come to affect our work. We are talking of access to financial support. We need financial support. Interest rate is high. So you go in for the financial support, it makes you non-competitive because it adds on to your costs. And it is not everything that you can transfer to the consumer. Some of them you'll have to take. And so it makes your work so difficult. We are talking of other unfriendly things like even the quality of the fabric or the quality of your materials that are on the market. Ordinarily, you might not want to use that material to produce, but that is what is accessible. That is the only thing accessible for you at the time. It makes it difficult. We are talking of even the production line. You are talking of packaging. You are talking of so many things that come into our work. Makes it so difficult. Before now, I was giving an example of when I have to produce a basic dress for somebody. And then I look at the situation, I said, okay, I can use this and I can do that. You go to the market, the actual thing you want to use for the work is not there. Meanwhile, time is running out for you. What do? You fall on what is available on the market. And when you use what is available on the market, it might not make your work come out the way you want it. The standard becomes low. Mind you, we will have to work maintaining international standards. If not improving on our standards, at least we should be able to maintain the standards which we are using so that we can be marketable. But all these things come to play and eventually makes us less competitive. Let me not say not competitive, but less competitive than we would have ordinarily had wanted to be. These are just about a few of the factors that make our work or the garment industry a bit expensive to maintain.
All right, so you've spoken about access to raw materials and the right type. You've spoken about supply and the cost of utilities. You've spoken about skilled labor and then the finance issue. Let me now come to Charles Ado. I know that your bank is quite pro-entrepreneurship. What do you make of this concern with regards to financing for players in the manufacturing sector?
I was actually expecting that question. It seems to run through what everybody is saying. So I think there are two key problems that we need to try and resolve. The first one is access to financing in the first place, and the second one is the cost of it in the second place. So let me treat the cost first. So with the cost of financing, I think there are certain things that are beyond the financial institutions, that is the macroeconomic conditions. When they are right, it makes it easier for us to price accordingly. As I speak to you, we've had to price above our cost of funds, which obviously we know is going on very high. The other thing is that I think that we need to work to better reference customers' credibility. We need better risk scoring models. We need better credit reference bureaus to understand the customer's risk to be able to price accordingly. I think that is an area that we all need to develop in that area. We need a much more responsive legal system where when covenants are put in, offer letters and stuff, as financial institutions will be able to execute them. And also the right of the lender, which according to the Lenders and Borrowers Act, should be able to help us recover collaterals that have been assigned to us as much as possible. So those are some of the things. But overall, I think that We also need to look at how the capital markets can be enhanced so that some of these institutions can actually raise funding through equity rather than always on the debt side of things as well. But I think that's a discussion for another day. But coming back to the assets, then from the financial institutions' perspective, what we need to do, or what the businesses need to do to make it easy for us, is making sure that they're keeping the right records, doing the right financials. For us, the key thing we need to see is the cash flows. You need to be able to demonstrate your cash flows, both projected, current. We need to see the ability of somebody to be able to repay a loan, and then it makes it easier for us as well. And despite that, as ABSA per se, we are looking at how we can support local indigenous institutions, and we're offering a lot of training and a lot of loans that are not collateral backed as well. So, and we worked with them. Once we can be able to see the cash flows, we are really ready to support as well.
You spoke about cash flows, but we do know that a lot of players are also in the informal sector, where they would say they don't know how to put together their data and gather their financial information and the likes. Is there a way around this?
There's a way. I think that this whole Momo ecosystem has come to work. Now you can print your statements, even when you receive payments through Momo.
Oh,
so through that, we're able to track how cash is coming in and going out as well. And then as financial institutions, we are working with these guys, recommending very low cost accountants to them, for them to be able to track. And the simple daily writing your cash inflows in a notebook and out as well. So these are all the things that we are trying to see how we can actually understand the cash flow to be able to repay loan facilities as well.
Interesting.
I was going to also add.
Oh, sorry.
If I can. Go ahead.
Okay. I think when we're just talking about access to finance, it hit me at a key constraint, and I'm sure Madame would also bear me out, is the fact that I think in Ghana, there's that element of perhaps repayments, as you said, is a real issue. In that when you're selling to a lot of customers, you may give a certain amount of credit. The likelihood that people are going to honor those credit terms and credit days in order to pay you back becomes a real issue, and it's a key constraint in business. Honestly, I think this runs across entirely for all manufacturers, suppliers of any materials. If it is 60 days or 90 days, when we're dealing with external customers, because maybe we've signed on to letters of credit, those we honor completely, because there are implications, like you said, legally. But internally, whether it is government or even private, I would have to admit that government tends to be perhaps the biggest one who tends to not uphold certain terms and conditions. But so it's led to a lot of people also doing the same in the private sector. So when you've done that and you've actually sold within a certain period, expecting that you'll receive your money back in order to pay, and that doesn't come back, you can imagine what that does to your liquidity or the cash flow for your business, and obviously the constraints that poses, because you're still having to pay labor, you're still having to pay all the other things that we've spoken about. So I think repayment rates, or ensuring that we honor our obligations when we're dealing with each other, so that then business can flourish, is a key element.
Interesting. Madame Bafo just kept nodding as you were talking.
Madame
but let's
Bafo,
hear
yes.
from
I just
Robert
wanted to, on the constraints, if I may.
Exactly.
One of the first constraints I wanted to bring up was what I call unfair competition from inferior imported goods.
Okay.
This is a key, and often we don't think. I know you had the Ghana Standards Authority here. So you have a situation where you have import that 50+%. A lot of them that are imported are inferior in quality and sell for cheaper. I want to give two examples. Ghana Standards Authority went out into the marketplace, not into supermarkets, the marketplace, and did analysis of all the cables that were being sold. Over 90% did not meet the standards of Ghana. I repeat, all the cables being sold, over 90%. And the only ones that met the standards were Ghanaian manufacturers.
So the question is, how did they get here?
Well, I'm going. Now we are talking about constraints, so I'm just going. So you have a situation where I'm even producing, and I know the two, Leroy and the Tropical, they were the only two. So here I am producing. You've told me to meet this quota. I'm doing it. Somebody's bringing less quality and selling it, and you're killing the market. So that is one of the constraints we need to look at. The other second constraint, and here I'm going to come a little bit at our colleagues here from the banks. We have a habit in this country of lending against capital, not against cash flow. Lending against security or collateral, not against cash flow. That is a big challenge. And I understand why, but it's a challenge.
I think he made a statement that they had some exemptions in that regard.
I'm not going to talk for him.
My focus was on cash flow. I know where he was coming from. I know where he's coming from.
A lot of them, you say you want to borrow 100, they want security of 120. Let's be honest. Yes. I mean, I think it's about time we dealt with these things. Otherwise, we're not going to go anywhere. If I already had the security for 120, I probably wouldn't be borrowing. But this is the reality. The third area I want to address is I'm talking about constraints here. We're not looking at solutions. So you asked the question of constraints. Is our pricing behavior as a people. We need a competition policy here in Ghana. It is something that I know the Ministry of Trade and Industry have been pushing. The reason why I'm saying is that our pricing structure sometimes is a little strange. How we roll up prices. When 1 minute is that everything 10%, 20%, 15%. I'm saying, how do it's just too fast. We have a pricing structure where it is, and I know I've heard them say some of it you pass and some of it you don't pass, but we have a pricing structure that needs to be reviewed. Because sometimes I'm wondering what the economic logic is in pricing X. So you buy something 1 week is 10, then it's 20, following week, then 3 months is 13. I'm saying that can't be possible. And we can give all example. And then the final area as constraint, and here I'm going to be a little critical of us, is that our habits and when I say Ghanaian, our habits and, how do I put it, our acquired taste. These are constraints.
Oh, that's true.
There is a certain rice we like. And then there's another rice that we see coming. And so we have to be honest with ourselves. If we are used to eating a certain type of rice, and somebody says, look, my friend, no, we want you to eat this kind of rice. I'm going to give, and then sometimes we say, no, we don't want it. I'll give an example. Some may remember, you have to be a certain age group here, remember, but today China is the manufacturing arm of the world. In my day, people laughed at things that were manufactured in Ghana because they were falling to pieces, but they had to go through that learning process. Sometimes we're a little too hard on our industry. We need to give them time. We need to give them time, a bit of trial and error. You don't just get up one day and just start producing certain things in a certain way. So, and as I'm saying, sometimes we don't give people an opportunity to fail and then learn and go forward. The minute they fail, that's it. But this is the reality of learning.
But some will argue that should the consumer wait for you to catch up? But I'm sure I'll take your thoughts on that after. But let me, Madam Bafo, you seem to agree with a number of things that Madam Teresa here said about the challenges and the constraints of manufacturers. So briefly tell us, what were you going to say?
Again.
You seem to agree with a number of the challenges that Madam Teresa shared from her perspective and her industry. You seem to agree with a lot of them. What do you make of them?
Well, actually, what touched me mostly was when it comes to payment. That is after we have a contract, or I know that, yes, this is going to take about 3 months, this is going to take about 4 months, because that exactly is what has been stated on the contract form. And then you produce and you supply. And when it comes into payment, it becomes another business. Another business as you anticipate. And there you are, in my case, is that it's a privately owned, I need the money. Of course, when I go to the bank, if my cash flow, as has been said, is like it comes with interest rate. And some of these things, the interest rates are
We seem to be losing Madam Bafo there. The
Actually
internet is
becomes
acting up a bit,
very
but then
uncomfortable.
you're still watching the Citi Business Forum on Citi TV. We'll take a quick breather. When we return, we'll continue the conversation. Please stay with us.
Good Day Energy Drink keeps you going. Available in major supermarkets and shops near you. Excessive drinking can be detrimental to your health. Not recommended for persons under 18 years, lactating mothers, pregnant women, and people sensitive to caffeine. This advert is FDA approved.
Yeah, welcome back to the Citi Business Forum here on Citi TV. My name is Michael Obodu, and the show is interactive. Please send your messages via 0550585832, and we'll read it out for you. You can tweet at me at mobodu or use the hashtag Citi Business Festival. Now, we have an interesting panel here discussing surviving the uncertainties of consumer markets and increasing Ghana's trade competitiveness. Now, we have Michael Koto on Zoom. Michael, you've been silent for a while, but then now to you. Your report has always highlighted the real picture to some extent in the consumer market, where Ghana stands, and you always give recommendations on how we can better position ourselves. Well, tell us about your latest report. What are the highlights?
Well, the latest report is the third edition in a series that we started in 2019. It's really just the first phase of what is designed to be a broader national study. So the supermarkets obviously are a microcosm of the broader consumer market. And what we plan to eventually do is roll our extended survey to the rest of the country and go outside the supermarkets and see what's going on in places like Makola and Kaneshi and KJTR and also some of our smaller, local shops and kiosks, and build a broader picture. So that's going to happen eventually, hopefully, when we get some funding, because so far we've been doing this as our own corporate initiative. But the third edition of the study looked at 20 other categories, and we looked at 11 supermarkets in Accra. About 6,700 product brands in total were part of the survey. We noticed that for the first time, the percentage of made in Ghana products across the 20 product categories across the 11 retail outlets had increased to 31%. In 2019, it was 18%. In 2020, it was 26%. So this is the highest we've seen. However, we also noticed that, and this is an important caveat, that we noticed for the first time the biggest decline in foreign products in the survey. So the overall absolute count of foreign products declined by about 24%. And that accounted for the big increase in the share of meat in Ghana. So the jump from 26% to 31% share of meat in Ghana was not necessarily because we saw a major increase in the absolute numbers of meat in Ghana products. It was essentially because there was a big drop in the share of foreign products. And the most likely explanation, obviously, for this big drop in foreign products is the global supply chain disruptions that we've seen since COVID and in recent times. So this is the very big picture. We've done some sort of trend analysis over the last 3 editions of the survey, and a few things are obvious. Number one is that manufactured and finished processed products as a percentage of meat in Ghana remain very low consistently over the 3 surveys. So in the current survey, it's about 28.4%, and which tells you about 70% of the made in Ghana products, being sold in these big retail outlets are unprocessed and semi-processed goods, and the majority of them are food products. We also noticed some interesting trends. There are some products that are branded with native Ghanaian names, and you'll see them and they'll look like made in Ghana products. And when you check it, you realize they're actually imported. So a lot of tomato, paste and cooking oils and rice, for example, you've got a lot of that trend, going on. So a lot of importers are beginning to brand a lot of products with Ghanaian, local names. And when you see them, it suggests it's a local brand, but when you check it, that's actually imported. Then we also noticed another trend, which is, that you pick up certain product categories that say made in Ghana. But when you check and you investigate, you realize that they're actually wholly imported and just repackaged in Ghana. So rice and sugar are classic examples in this category. And we see a lot of that as well. We also noticed that very disturbing, there's certain product categories, what we call the product categories where you have more than 50% made in Ghana, has dropped. So in the previous survey, we had 15 product categories that broke the 50% threshold. In this survey, the number of product categories that have more than 50% made in Ghana has dropped from 15 to 10. So that's quite disturbing. We've also noticed that certain products like chocolates, fruit juice, salt, rice, consistently have stayed below 40%, made in Ghana across the board. And these are products that you would think, should do way better. Water, for example, we still have about 40+% of the water being sold in these big supermarkets being imported. And that makes sense. If you take eggs, in the first survey in 2019, the percentage of eggs made in Ghana, locally produced eggs, was about 90%. In the second survey, it reduced to around 50%, which was in 2020. It's gone up to about 3% now, but it doesn't make sense that we import so much eggs. Part of the problem with eggs was that somewhere in 2020, we had a challenge with poultry feeds. I don't know if you remember, and that contributed to a very adverse impact on the local poultry industry. And we saw that reflect, in the data. If you take a category like cooking oils, the local palm oil is still the only product which has 100% made in Ghana. But if you take the other cooking oils, the other vegetable cooking oils, we are losing a lot of market share in the big supermarkets. And we've seen the sharpest drop in these cooking oils between the 2020 and the 2021 survey, which we're releasing in 2020. And part of that is related to, I think, Wellman announced that they were shutting down their factory.
Yeah.
And that has already reflected in the survey data. So it's seen the sharpest drop. So a lot of the challenges that our manufacturers are going through, a lot of what my co-panelists have talked about are real. I mean, this survey of supermarkets, it's not the most complete picture of the competitiveness of our local manufacturers and local producers.
Michael?
Fundamentals in the manufacturing sector. We need to address a lot of those fundamentals. And be able to, I still think that as a country, we need to be able to draw a list of products, a list of products, and make a decision that the share of imports of these products, we want to progressively reduce them year on year over a certain period of time. It's a 5 years target we set, or a 10-year target we set ourselves, so that we focus. We need to zero in on certain products and just zero in on them and see what we can do. One of the big challenges we've noticed, and there's a lot of discussion about access to finance. We spoke to some of the local suppliers to the supermarkets to try to understand what challenges they are facing. And the biggest challenge has to do with finance. As you know, the supermarkets take between 30 to 90 days to pay their suppliers, which is standard practice. But a lot of our local suppliers are not able to wait that long. So even where they have an opportunity to supply more products to the supermarkets, they limit the volumes that they supply because they can't lock up, the capital, wait for 90 days, right? They don't have the capacity. And that reflects very poorly on our financial sector because, there should be a solution to this. We've noticed that there's it's an almost complete lack of, invoice receivable financing solutions on the market. And it's not just an issue of costs of these financing. It's also just the availability of them. So this is an area where there's a big opportunity, and it's not just a big opportunity for the banks. It's not just the supermarkets. This reflects across the board. A lot of the challenges that I think Teresa talked about initially concerning suppliers not being able to pay on buyers not being able to pay on time. A lot of these bottlenecks in supply chain financing can be dealt with, but the banks sometimes don't pay attention to these very interesting bottlenecks. So we need these solutions on the market. It's not just supplies to supermarkets, supply to hotels, to restaurants. They typically have to wait for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And if we can have more invoice receivable financing solutions on the market at reasonably priced rates, the banks have to roll out these solutions. I believe that we can see more local producers, potentially increasing their share of products in the supermarkets. The FDA, the last point I'll make is that the FDA has been spearheading a campaign to increase the share of made in Ghana in the supermarket. So that's really very good. And I think they've tried to urge the supermarkets to make dedicated shelves for made in Ghana. The study that we do go beyond these dedicated shelves. But the FDA has recently begun to roll out a program to support local producers to improve their standards and accelerate, fast track certification for them to be able to improve, their ability to meet the requirements of, standards requirements of the supermarket. So that's good. But we need to see other, entities, the likes of Ghana Enterprise Agency, the likes of Maslock, the likes of, Agri Development Bank and the rest, some of the other government entities should also emulate what the FDA is doing to consciously boost made in Ghana. And it will be interesting to see if this research that we do at Confidence extends beyond the supermarket, what the picture will look like. We have some hypotheses, but it would be good to actually do the research and see what the picture will look like. But I completely agree with my co-panelists. As a country, we need to address manufacturing. If we don't do it, we're going to keep, we're going to be trapped in this vicious cycle that we find ourselves in.
Right, interesting one, Michael. So I find it quite worrying that the fact that 70% of the goods that are sold there are not processed. That literally puts us in the box when it comes to growing the manufacturing sector. But then let me pick the thoughts of my panelists here to find out, what do you make of this report, Mr. Lindsay?
Well, I think the report basically confirms, to be honest with you, and it's always good to have data because one makes decisions on data is valuable, that for the 15 to 20% of our market that is being supplied, this is the reality on there. Again, the caveat he made is important because I think at best, if you were to normalize it, I'm sure he does that, we are flat to going down. Let's not, if you normalize it, it says itself, the overall is dropped. So we've become a bigger percentage of what is left.
True.
So we've been running around the 20s, early 20s in terms of percentage there. And we're not surprised at that. I think there are things we can and should do to address that. The area that I will say, he mentioned something about FDA. The FDA is not doing this in isolation. I do know that under the Ministry of Trade and Industries program, even under 1D1F, the FDA and the Standards Authority, one of the key areas. And we try and make sure that every company that went through the product was of a quality and ability to engage. But I think there's more we can do. And when the time comes, I'm happy to engage in that. But I think there are some specific interventions we should start to look at to engage. In terms of the fact that it's 70%, again, not surprising. A number of the reasons already expanded is that, to be honest, it is easier to sell unprocessed than processed. You face less headache.
True.
As a business person, as an entrepreneur, if all I simply have to do is just buy fresh tomatoes and just hand it over, it's easier than buying the tomatoes, turning it into tomato paste and selling it.
So then there has to be a way to motivate people to get in there.
That one, if you want to go there, I'm happy to go. But my point is that we shouldn't be surprised that 70% of it is unprocessed, because that actually reflects to a certain level the reality. The president refers to it as the Guggen, whatever his name is, that governor that we had at the time of independence, economy, where where basically our economies were designed to supply raw materials to the north and import finished products. That is the way we are designed. So I am not surprised at that. In terms of some of the things we should start doing, there are key areas. I mean, I have some fairly radical proposals I think we should be doing.
But I'm surprised you're not surprised, because government has been pushing this 1D1F conversation for a while now. Don't you think that we should actually see it reflect in our supermarkets?
We should. But you see, again, I want to come to something. How long have we been running the 1D1F? In reality, first of all, remember I mentioned earlier, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough time to succeed, because we live in the age of instant everything. Whether it's an instant dance on TikTok that becomes a global sensation. Do you know how long it took for Gihok first to be set up, or for the manufacturing company, from the day she thought about, I want to set up a factory, to the day it's opened? This is not something you do overnight. Point one. Point two, you have to build the momentum and the confidence levels that companies have, that if I set it up, I'm going to get backing. Because, look, entrepreneurs are a rare breed. Let us be really clear. The vast majority of people in the world work for people. When I say vast majority, 90+%. Entrepreneurs are a rare breed. If you don't support them, you know what they do? They pack the bags and go and ply their trade elsewhere, or they decide to take another route. So what we need to do is have a situation where programs like the 1D1F have to be done for the next 20 years. For the next 10 years. We have to have a systemic program of saying that we are going to support this sector. And let me pick one that is always topical, rice. We should have a program like the Nigerians had that says that in the next 5 or 10 years, you pick the period, we are going to go from X percentage of the rice being consumed in Ghana being imported to X. When COVID hit, a country decided they're no longer sending us the rice. What other more incentive, what other more reason do we have for doing that? These are practical, and I'm happy to go. So, for instance, one of the things that I am been pushing for quietly, and I know today I will come out with it, is that we should make the banks have a certain percentage of their balance sheet lent to manufacturing. He will tell you, when I was chairman of Cal Bank, that time he was at Cal, I was always on the case saying, why is the manufacturing such a small part of it? We should make it a rule, like they have in India. And they had a number of the countries that 20% of your balance sheet must be to manufacturing, or you don't maintain your license.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we've reached the stage where we have to be bold in some of our activity. Government has to lead the stage in paying people back on time. No, these are things we must, look, we just have to be honest with ourselves in what is engaged. We have to be able to honestly tell the Ghanaians, if we continue to consume, I don't want to pick a country, product X from product Y, when your kids don't get jobs, understand why. Because we cannot get those jobs if we continue to do these things. They say the definition of somebody who is not living in reality is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If we keep living in a world where we keep importing, we will keep living in a world where we keep having problems. If we keep living in a world where we are not supporting our entrepreneurs, we'll keep living in a world where entrepreneurs either will migrate themselves or service provider. When I talk about those service, there was a data that came out that shocked me. There's 60,000 top surgeons, Nigerian surgeons in the US. Top surgeons. You know how much surgeons earn? They couldn't apply that, so they left. The brain drain, the skilled people we are losing.
I actually hear that in the UK, most of their top health workers are from West Africa.
It's
Ghana
a fact.
and Nigeria.
It's a fact. We haven't talked about services, but that's also fast-moving consumer goods, by the way. They're linked to that. So I think it is time that, and this discussion started. But I think we have lost a little bit of momentum and the urgency. And I really believe we need to bring it back, saying, what are we going to do? This is not a debate between NDC or MPP. This is Ghana. Or, sorry about the other parties. My father's old party, CPP, I shouldn't forget them. I'll get in trouble. We need to start having this discussion. We need to have a situation where the actions of government, the president said something which to me, one of his first speeches he gave, this was in 2016, December, was to the Private Enterprise Federation. And he said, I am not going to do the business of the private sector. I am not going to crowd them out. It is key that governments don't crowd out the private sector. The banks do a very good business lending to government. There are some things we need to do. We have a situation where per capita we have more banks than even Nigeria.
Yeah.
This is a fact.
That's true.
So when we talk about some of these things, these are tough decisions we have to make. But I think we've reached a stage in our cycle where we have to make those tough decisions. And by the way, and at the risk of getting political, I don't need somebody from another country to come and tell us what the tough decisions are. We know what the decisions are. We are smart people. Ghanaians are smart. We are the second or third generation of smart people who have, this lady does not need, she can run Cytorika in any country in the world. She doesn't need to, but she's Ghanaian. This gentleman can do the same in the banking. So we should get to the situation where we make those calls ourselves. But I think it is a key aspect. Just the final one I wanted to, if I may.
In conclusion.
We have to start behaving the way we talk. So the Vice President, for instance, made a couple of statements, which I don't know if it's been followed through. He said, for instance, that, let me give another example. We have a pharmaceutical company here. We should state that the Ghana Health Service will buy 90% of all what it needs from locally manufactured pharma companies. Now that makes a statement of intent and boldness. I know the VP said the same thing about fertilizers. and he said the same thing, because at one stage, remember, we imported $50 million worth of toilet roll every year into Ghana. Can you imagine?
Seriously.
$50 million. Are we not able of manufacturing that? Anyway, let me stop there.
Right. Very interesting conversation there. So you're basically saying that we have to take the tough decisions and policy must drive this. Yes. And you talked about the one district, one factory.
Yes.
So it means that that policy, for instance, has to be nationalized. So it goes beyond the government in power and it becomes an agenda that we are pursuing collectively.
And I think this is key because, for instance, in my discussions with our NDC colleagues, you know, what I say to them is that, okay, you can debate the speed of which we roll it out, but please don't debate whether or not we should industrialize. Now, I don't think any MP or any person in Ghana can say that we shouldn't industrialize. If we don't industrialize, we should not be surprised we're in a situation where we're sitting here where we are still interest rates now going back again, inflation getting to 30s.
So industrialization will help us stabilize our economy, basically that. Madam Teresa, your take on confidence research, what do you make of this?
Okay, I think confidence research, and I think kudos to Michael Cotto and his team, was an excellent one. He mentioned, obviously, in terms of payments, and back to my point, that some of the suppliers limit the products on the shelf space and to the supermarkets. I think a point that we tend to forget comes back to what I call VAT payments. Because if you have credit days, or in a system where maybe it might be 60 days before or 90 days, which the retail trade or supermarket is going to pay that supplier. And within 1 month, because of the receivables, he's having to make VAT payments on the receivables that he's actually already just supplied to them. He hasn't received his money. If we don't start, like saying we've just been talking about, Mr. Humka Lindsay was saying, if we don't start looking at how the policy affects the business, you end up collapsing that business. Because that medium or cottage supplier is now trying to make payments 2 or 3 months in advance for monies he's not received. Other countries do it sometimes even on a quarterly basis. Have we thought of perhaps then if you move it to a quarterly basis, it can then align with the 90-day payment? So you have to look at what we were talking about, some of the pain points, and find effective solutions. A lot of times when we're looking at our solutions, we try and do what I call quick fix. Quick fix is not also going to work, because if you don't understand where the problem is starting from, you effectively just put on a small and, as I say, immediate solution that may not be long-lasting or long-term. So if something like this helps the supplier, he might be able to increase his supply onto the shelf space. So as such a report it gives you an insight into what I call shopper understanding, because you're also beginning to see what products on the shelf space people actually want. We definitely need more of this made available to manufacturers and producers to guide us. But I think one of the things we also don't do very well in Ghana is to invest in some of the research, so that when you're making a product, it's easy to say, oh, this person is making it, I'm going to make the same thing. You need to sometimes ask yourself, and we call it in consumer market, what's your unique selling proposition? What makes me fundamentally different? If we are all in the tomato paste business, what's making me different? And if as Ghanaian products, we have that unique selling proposition, a lot of times we need to also understand that they may be a tangible benefit, or they may be even better to be an emotional one. When we touch on the emotions of people, we're able to then build on their consumer loyalty. I'll give you a perfect example. Most of us are trying to say that in such hard times, you find that what do consumers do? They'll start to trade down. They're either looking for smaller packs or price becomes an issue. So if, as we're saying, automatically you as the manufacturer are increasing price, you begin to lose a little bit of loyalty, because every single penny counts. So I'm looking on even that 50 pesos might make me move from product A to product B. And therefore, I need to be careful how I do my pricing in order that I don't price myself out of the price range of my consumers. If I can make certain changes internally, and I think Madam Bafor touched on it, if I understand clearly what my consumer needs, then I need to make sure those I fundamentally hold on to. Anything and everything that that consumer does not need in how I'm making my product is what we call in lean management waste. Can I take those out? It could be in the process. It could be even in the product. Sometimes it could even be in, say, maybe the formulation of it. But if you are even making those changes, please be careful that you also do not affect the quality of it. Because a lot of times that's where we begin to say, if I can squeeze to make it a little cheaper, then I can maintain. When you do that, realize, and back to certain studies like this, consumers are very savvy. I know, I look at the product, I take it home. They may not tell you, the manufacturer, that they're unhappy. What we tend to do in Ghana is they'll tell maybe at least 6 or 10 other people, I tried this the other day, it didn't work, then the whole situation starts. Then you find that, yes, maybe you've gone up on price, but your volumes have dropped. So you are actually not making enough to keep that factory going. So it's a very delicate balance for us as manufacturers, but if we are trying to ride out the storm that we're in, we also need to take the consumers along on the journey.
Thank you very much for that submission. Mr. Koto, you mentioned in your report that some companies were branding foreign imported products and labeling them made in Ghana. That basically indicates that made in Ghana actually sells. So when we come back, we'll talk more about competitiveness as Ghana and what we can do to push our products even further. You are still watching the Citi Business Forum here on Citi TV. We'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll bring you more. Please stay. Yeah, welcome to the Citi Business Festival here on Citi TV, where we are discussing how to survive the uncertainties of the consumer market and increasing Ghana's trade competitiveness. Now, we'll come to you, Mr. Koto, again. Yeah, as you mentioned earlier in some of the findings, that's the fact that some products were labeled made in Ghana, even though they weren't. And clearly, if people are doing this, then it does mean that made in Ghana products can be competitive, not so?
Absolutely. I'd like to cite the example of a very interesting example, which is the example of bananas. So whilst Ghanaians, as Ghanaians, we seem to have acquired a taste for foreign products. When it comes to bananas, for some very strange reason, a lot of people that I know, including myself, prefer the locally farmed banana, not just the locally farmed, but the if you like, the indigenous banana to imported banana. I've seen this. There are a lot of people who would just have this preference. So it's there. There are certain things that, as a people, I think that we just prefer to consume made in Ghana. If you look at rice, there's been a lot of consciousness, and consciousness is part of this. We we used to consume a lot of local rice. When I was young and was growing up, most of the rice around, and I'm not the oldest person in the room, but most of the rice that I saw growing up was locally produced rice. For some reason, in a very short period of time, we've had this radical shift to foreign imported rice. But in the last 5 years, if you like, there's been a lot of very conscious campaign to promote locally produced rice. And you see this campaign is having an impact. So mindset shifts and building the consciousness for locally produced goods is a part of this. It's not just going to happen by chance. So we need a lot of these campaigns to make sure that, as consumers, we would have an appreciation that consuming made in Ghana is part of being patriotic. Of course, you are not going to consume made in Ghana simply because you want to be, as a consumer, your consumer preferences are going to be shaped by, very basic fundamentals. You're looking at the price, you're looking at the quality, you're looking at stuff like that. But our local producers, if you look at what's going on with rice now, there's a lot of made in Ghana rice on the market now, which is just as good as any imported rice you can have. One of the trends we picked up in the supermarkets, packaging. So for the longest time, packaging of Ghanaian products has never been the best. We've begun to see a trend where in certain product categories, we were shocked to discover that the packaging, the quality of packaging of made in Ghana products was actually better than a lot of imported products we saw on the shelves. So we're catching up. And Mr. Ankalisi made an important point, which is that we need to give ourselves time to learn and mature when it comes to local production and manufacturing and all of that. When COVID struck and global supply chains were disrupted, we had no option but to fall on local producers to fill the gap. I remember driving one evening, throughout Accra, as Spintex Road, East Legon. I went all the way to Airport Presidential Area. I was looking for sanitizer, just a bottle of sanitizer to buy. I couldn't get. And within a week, we had this, influx of locally produced sanitizers. And for most of the COVID period, it was locally manufactured sanitizers that we all used. Once the COVID-induced supply chain restrictions eased, we've seen most of these locally made sanitizers go out of business. You go on the market, you don't find them again. And the foreign sanitizers are taking over the shelves again. Why? Mask, face mask. The same thing happened. We had to fall on local producers to produce face masks. Once, supply chains, bottlenecks eased, all the locally produced face masks have disappeared from the market, and we are back to buying foreign-made, face masks. So, what COVID taught us, it opened a window of opportunity for us to accelerate, the production of made in Ghana and increase the market share of locally produced goods. We don't appear to have consciously taken advantage of this. If you look at the findings that I just spoke about, the 24% drop in foreign brands in the supermarkets tells us that this COVID-induced supply chain bottlenecks created a window of opportunity that still exists. That window of opportunity is still there. This drop in foreign products that we saw in the supermarkets, I believe you would find the same drop in the share of foreign products in the wider market outside of the supermarkets if you did the survey. Because the global supply chains have not completely eased. So that window of opportunity is still there. But we need to consciously make the effort to capture that market share, consolidate our gains, and make sure that all the leaders, we can provide all the support to make sure that we can maintain that market share. So made in Ghana can be competitive. We can absolutely be competitive. But for all the reasons that my co-panelists, especially those from manufacturing, have cited, there has to be a conscious effort. We need to set targets We need real-time monitoring. We don't do a lot of research to monitor the impact. 1D1F, brilliant initiative. I would like to see us have a baseline study, and I'm sure there was some sort of baseline study for 1D1F, but we need to have this real-time monitoring of 1D1F and what impact this is having on market share of made in Ghana products in different product segments. We need to have that kind of real-time research, evidence-based approach to monitoring the success of these initiatives. That's the only way we would know whether we're sustaining the gains or whether we are retrogressing. And we don't do a lot of that. So we need a lot more of that.
So from what you are saying, basically, made in Ghana products can be competitive, but there has to be that level of deliberateness in pushing it. But let me talk to Madame Bafo. Tell us about the fabric industry. How competitive is it in Ghana?
Well, the fabric industry for me is very competitive in Ghana. I am saying this because every aspect of the Ghanaian life can depend on the garment industries. You go to the offices, our products are being used. Go to the hospitals, our products are being used. Go to the schools, our products are there. Go to churches, our products are being used. So we can be very, very competitive. But of course, we probably would have to put in more, would have to do more to make us more competitive. For example, improving our quality. And when I say improving our quality, I come back to understanding what our consumers want and trying to tailor our work towards what the consumer demands. We would have to improve, if not maintain, the standards that we have already had. And mind you, we should not focus just or target just the country. We should target going beyond our borders. And so it is maintaining standards that will make us survive in the borders, in the countries across our borders. So we should improve our standards. We should begin to take very critical look at avoiding waste in our production, because now everything that comes to play in the first place is expensive. So you cannot afford to be wasteful. So we need to avoid waste. We need to go to specifics, understand the terrain. What is it that I want? What is it that I am making? And so we tailor our work towards that, making sure that it is exactly this and nothing else that could be rejected, or nothing else that has to be altered, nothing else that will take too much out of me. For example, Ms. Michael was talking about the COVID and its repercussions. I, after COVID, has made a policy for myself and for my business that I would not spend time looking at the negative aspects of COVID. What COVID brought, what COVID did to affect this and to affect that, but I would want to pick what the challenges were, how I was able as a manufacturer to keep the pace even within COVID, how the country, for example, Michael gives an example of how Ghanaians came in to produce a nose mask, which falls directly in my industry. If this was able to be done, why should I immediately forget about it? Can I not take this and move on so that now it becomes a policy? You don't look at the negative aspect of it, move on, make it positive, grow out of it. What is it that you can take out of this situation to grow? And so I want to see this situation, some of the things that could be used to improve or to make us competitive, as now trying to take the opportunity, if not to expand, to build on. For example, I ask myself, is it possible that the financial institutions can even invest in manufacturers to expand their businesses, just so to be able to stop stop the gap, as we all depend too much on foreign goods. We have acquired taste that sends us out to import goods. I want to expand. As a private person, it becomes difficult. Can banks now begin to support us? can banks now begin to invest in us so that private manufacturers can expand and become more competitive in the business? I believe that we are very competitive, and we can be even more competitive. But sometimes we have these constraints which needs to be addressed.
Okay, so basically we can be competitive, and if we pay more attention to standards and the like, we should be able to compete even on a global scale. When you spoke about finances, Charles was nodding. Do you buy into the idea?
I think it's so obvious that we don't have a choice. It's about time we support local indigenous institutions. We don't have a choice. And I like what Michael said about receivable discounting, invoicing discounting. I think we should also start thinking about some of these short-term facilities to help this industry as well, and look at the pricing as well as how we can mitigate the risk we see in that area as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, Robert, you have some slides to share with us?
Yes.
Okay, so walk us through then. Where lies the opportunity in this whole?
So this was a slide, slide 2, please, if they can bring that up.
Okay.
This was a slide that, in fact, while I was still Deputy Minister, the Ghana Export Promotion Authority is under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and there was a process being done to we went around every region to talk to the private sector to share what are the real opportunities, not some nice opportunity. What are the real opportunities for businesses in Ghana, particularly within the AFCFTA?
I'm wondering if we'll be able to walk through all of them. But
no, I can just pick, and then I don't know if it's being shown. I can't see it. But
I'm sure they're working on that. But maybe give us the top 5.
So let me start first with the first point, is that out of the 54 plus countries in Africa, Ghana is the 8th largest importer. So that tells you that we are a big market. So remember, there are another 53 countries looking to export to us. So the point here is that there's opportunity, but also there's a risk. So the very clear idea is we're there. So the first thing you need to do at this slide is that the size of the absolute box tells you the size of the opportunity.
All right.
So for instance, palm oil is bigger than sodium cyanide in terms of opportunities in Africa. These are real. These are not some. These are real opportunities. So let me say palm oil, top right. So it says that the size of that box tells you the opportunity that Ghana has for supplying Africa. Wow. Of that opportunity, we are currently doing 40%. So that's what the darker 40% means. That means the opportunity for palm oil extract, crude and fraction, is even bigger than cocoa.
Wow.
And this is something we forget about. So the palm oil extraction, and that's what's so sad we hear Wilmot leaving. Because the reality, this is a huge opportunity for us. So oil palm, this is malt extract. Again, on malt extract, we're only doing 5% of the opportunity. Let me take one that cooked pasta. Cooked pasta, opportunity, and the box, by the way, is money terms. So it's real amount. So you can see that cooked pasta is bigger than cocoa powder.
Wow.
In Africa, cocoa, I wish I could point. I don't know if cocoa powder is the bottom left.
Okay.
And cooked pasta is just under the oil extract. And the cooked pasta, we're only doing 0% of it. Cocoa, we're only doing 23% of the opportunity.
Okay.
So frozen.
You can approach the screen and feel free.
Okay, let me do that. Maybe because I'm trying to point and it's not really working. Yes. So let me just try and.
Okay.
So the absolute size of the box shows the bigger opportunity. So that is bigger than that, and that is bigger than that. Okay. So within the oil palm opportunity, we are doing 40%.
Okay.
Within pasta, we're doing 0.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and this is within Africa, and this is real money. This is current money being spent by Africans. Okay, cocoa powder is here. Pasta is bigger than cocoa powder. And I'm only bringing this so people to understand what we're doing. Ethyl alcohol. Yes. We're doing most of it. Okay, some of this is not coming out very clear. Cocoa beans.
All right.
We're doing small, but we're doing most of it. What is telling you that within Africa, we have the opportunity for cocoa beans is that big.
Okay.
That's small stretch. But let's look at, where's my shito? Oh, I have it here somewhere. Let me look at another one. So by the way, oil palm. is the biggest box for opportunities in Africa. From oil palm, you get margarine, fats, crude palm oil.
Okay.
So the biggest opportunity for Africans, Ghana, looking to Africa, is in the malt extract and the oil palm.
So you're basically saying we can make more money.
We can make money like there's no tomorrow, without very little, because the opportunity, Africans are importing these already. And this is something we know. Wood, pawn chipped here. Opportunity is there. This is what we are supplying. Plywood, we're doing most of it. Okay? Banana, somebody's talking about fresh or dried. The opportunity is that we're only doing 15%. Can't read it very well. 15% of opportunities of banana, fresh or dried. Okay? Prepared or preserved tunas.
Zero.
We do. This is the opportunity. Do you know how much tuna we have of our shores? We're doing 0% of it.
Wow.
It tells you there's garments as well. Where's the garment side? I've got it somewhere here. Some of it. Okay, so let me get. Okay, yarn, woven, mixture of. I can't read it from there. So hey, this eyes business gets to you. The bottom line is that the size of it, we're only doing so much. So the opportunity is also big.
Okay.
The reason why I'm bringing this up is because sometimes we live in a world where the data doesn't support what we think is an opportunity.
Okay.
I give the example of cocoa versus oil palm.
Yeah. And we know things like oil palm revolutionized economies for like Malaysia and the likes.
Malaysia gets $15 billion a year of export. They've got just under 4 million hectares of oil palm. We have over 6.5 million hectares of arable land in Ghana we have not used. So what if we just decided we're going to put 1 million hectares under oil palm?
Imagine how much we could make.
So the point, and so these are real numbers. Real numbers. This just shows that our biggest partner outside ECOWAS is South Africa. But the point of the matter is that as a business person, and this was done by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, shared amongst businesses. Oh, here's the, remember I was talking about beauty. Beauty, makeup, skincare. This is the opportunity. Perfumes. This is the size of the opportunity. And we're only doing that. Again, just think about it. This is cocoa. What do you call it? Not cocoa. Shea butter.
Interesting.
Makeup, skincare. That is the size of the opportunity.
So clearly the opportunities there are enormous. We just have to channel our energies right and then maximize these opportunities.
But it also should help us in policy direction and targeting, what we were saying. So if we really want to help, because we have limited resources, we have to target our resources of where we can get the biggest buck. This should drive it, not I feel I can sell. That is not a market-driven economy, and we live in market-driven economies of this world. This should help us decide where it is that we should put our money and our effort.
I think that's very impressive coming from you, and this is very, very, very solid information that should drive how we channel our resources. But then we're running out of time, so I'll take final submissions from everybody on what you've made on the discussion and the way forward. We'll start off with you, sir.
Great insights. I think I've learned a lot. I mean, the report suggestions by the panelists, I think is good. I will take advantage to tell all these local institutions, APSA, always willing to help support Africanacity. We believe in supporting our locals, so please come to us. We have all the facilities to help you do this business as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you too. Madam Margaret, your final take in 1 minute, please. I think your mic is muted. Could you please unmute it? But whilst you're at it, Madam Theresa, okay, I think we can hear you now.
Yes, so I would want to say I'm so grateful to have been on the panel. I have learned so much, and I think it's been an opportunity also to come up to air some of the challenges that we have, and the potential that we also have to be able to make it beyond our borders. Very grateful.
Awesome. Madam Theresa, your final take.
Okay, so I think excellent discussion, as everyone has also pointed out. It's very clear that, and especially to me, that manufacturing is at the heart of building a better tomorrow for Ghana. And if we are able to support and sustain our manufacturing industry, in fact, grow it, looking at the chart that we just saw, you can see that even if we're talking palm oil, it's not crude. It's said excluding is crude. So there has to be refinement of that palm oil in order to give you the value. And it is in value addition that we actually make more money and we're able to then grow our economy. So thank you.
Value addition that we can make more money and grow our brilliant submission there. Michael, your final take on the conversation so far?
I'm very happy that Mr. Omkalisi spoke about the Pan-African market opportunity, the export opportunity. Because I was going to speak to that, and he's done, brilliant justice to that subject matter. If the African Continental Free Trade Area take full effect, the market opportunity is going to be huge. And I think that Ghanaian producers, manufacturers, business people need to begin to look beyond the Ghanaian market and look at the opportunity, wider opportunity. The biggest issue, if you look at our market potential in Africa, is that we are underutilizing most of that opportunity. That's the crux of the data that Mr. Omkalisi was showing. We're not utilizing most of the opportunity in the African market. The African Continental Free Trade Area is an opportunity to gain tariff-free and low-tariff access into a lot of these markets. And that's one thing we need to look at. We need to dream bigger. The second point, my last point is that I think that we need to take a national security approach to manufacturing and local production. We've so far dealt with it from an economic argument standpoint.
Okay.
I think that in addition to the economic argument standpoint, we need a national security rationale for boosting manufacturing and local production. Because what COVID taught us is that it's not just boosting local employment, boosting competitiveness of your economy. It's also a national security matter. As a country, we should be able to agree on a national security list of products, which would say that for these products, they are so fundamental to our national survival in the case of any global emergencies, that a certain minimum percentage of these products should always be produced locally. And we make all the policy interventions that are required to make sure that this happens.
All right.
When you provide this base, our local people will build, our business people will build on this and leverage it. And the national security basis will be leveraged and converted into, economic advantages.
All right, then, Michael, thank you so much. And thank you to my panelists. We had Robert Omkalisi, who is a former Deputy Trade Minister. Teresa Yamson, CEO of Phytoraka Pharmaceuticals. Cynthia Bafo, who joined us via Zoom, who is the CEO of Syndex Garments Manufacturers. Michael Koto, CEO of Confidence, who joined us via Zoom. And Charles Addo, Head of Retail at APSA. Let me go through a quick, some of the few messages that came through. Most basically, the government has to consider pushing more resources into the construction of industries that will help us produce more of these consumer goods rather than importing. Then it says, I agree with the former trade minister that our challenges are not transitionary. It is not enough to eliminate rice importation if we don't have the competitive advantage to produce enough for both internal and external markets. That was from Katapu Cyril from Facebook. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Citi Business Festival. My name is Michael Lubudu. Please know that this edition of the Citi Business Festival was sponsored by APSA Bank with support from MTN, Gesal IT Consortium, and GIPC. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you same time next week, same time. My name is Michael Lubudu. Let's connect on Twitter at @MUbudu. Take care and bye-bye.